a class that ends at 1 at the exact same time that your class begins. It used to be on the class right next to each other. Right now it's on different buildings.
Okay.
So we're probably going to be 5 or 6 minutes late because
Okay.
I can do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different, but we have the same issue in corporate finance where we got different rules in the schedule. And on prof that we know we don't change units.
So, okay, Margari is new, and I'm like older than her in the school. I'm telling you, for example, I also have undergrad school course, and for example, officer is like advising me just check with us before the course because it can just change before the seminar. Okay, not only for this course, just always check before maybe like 1 hour, 2 hour the seminar and confirm your location. Okay. But it's okay, if you have that kind of problem, that's okay, but in general, let's try to be more on time, okay? Check the places also in advance on the map. It's not always easy to find the places. I got lost today as well, okay? So, okay, even if your agreement is benefiting from individual exemption, Commission can start investigation against us. You examine your agreement if it's like it has like potential anti-competitive effects. Then we have this informal guidance system. Do you know what's that? Informal guidance system. Have you ever heard business review letters of Department of Justice?
Yeah.
Who said yes? Yes. So what's business review letters of Department of Justice?
Well, I don't have a really clear definition about that. I just read, I ever, watched a video about it, so I'm not pretty sure.
It's okay.
This is an organization that's, collect information from the company and just collect the relevant data about whether you have monopoly, action or something like that. Is that right?
Not exactly. It's more like I asked because for business review letters because it's something really similar to what we have in here in EU informal guidance system. So what you can happen within business review letter and also in the scope of informal guidance, you can apply to competition authority, in our case Commission, and in the States Department of Justice, and you can ask for their informal opinion. You can say that, okay, we will have this agreement. Can you check, because now, see, they don't have this assessment authority anymore, so you have to assess, actually lawyers should assess whether the agreement is benefiting from exemption or not, but you can still go and ask Commission informal opinion, what do you think about this? Do you think it's okay or not? And Commission can tell you that, yes, it looks okay, considering the things that you submitted to me, but again, that doesn't prevent them to take action later on, okay? So it's just like information to know that there is this informal guidance system that you can apply Commission informally. Any question about this part? Okay. Enforcement by the Commission. So Commission can start investigation ex officio or by complaint, okay? And who can file a complaint? Anyone who has legitimate interest. So who is that person having legitimate interest? Yes?
Who's affected by cartel?
Yes, perfect. So not only cartel, but any kind of anti-competitive agreement or conduct. So if you are a person actually like undertaking and affected by anti-competitive conduct or agreement directly or indirectly, we consider you as a person has legitimate interest to file a complaint to the Commission. Okay, so you can go and file a complaint to the Commission. Let me ask you, so let's say there is this competition law infringement and you are that person affected by this. So one option is going to Commission or National Competition Authority to file a complaint, okay? what's your second option to request the enforcement of competition law in the EU?
Take civil action.
Yes, you can go to court and file a civil action. Now let's move to my second question. Which one you prefer? Filing a complaint to Commission or National Competition Authority, or taking a civil action before a national court and request enforcement?
The first one,
First one, filing it why?
because if it's a civil action, you'll need to fund it personally, so you're probably better getting the commission to do their suit, and then you can then take civil action because the case is already laid out for you, so it saves money, saves time.
So Kern is concerned about money. He doesn't want to pay money and saying that I will just file a complaint and let the commission deal with it. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why actually we have generally public enforcement in the EU. Money. People don't want to pay money to enforce competition law. What's the second reason? Think about civil action and being a plaintiff in a civil action.
Yeah, it's probably just faster for you to go to the commission because when you're in the court, all the procedure of the national court, and when they take it to the commission, then it's just the procedure is way long.
Okay, it depends, because if it's a complicated case, again, it can take commission long time. But I think we are really close actually to the second reason.
I would say maybe the court will be evidence, and if you don't have that, then you need the commission to actually investigate.
Yes, perfect. In the court, as a plaintiff, you have the burden of proof, okay? You have to convince the court that there is a competition law infringement. Whereas if you file a complaint, you can just like say, commission, just deal with it, okay? Commission will collect all the evidence, examine the things, and they will, and actually after that point, your responsibilities in principle end. So it's more convenient to file a complaint to the commission if there is a infringement affecting you, okay? If you file complaint to the commission, and if commission rejects your complaint, you can appeal that decision, okay? You have the right to say that you were wrong to reject my complaint. Any questions about this slide? Okay, in here, I again made this table, and this is actually showing the stages of investigation procedure of European Commission. Okay, so in the first stage, and we will talk about each of these stages in more detail. We have preliminary investigation stage. So in this stage, actually, Commission is looking whether there is something to investigate. Okay, they have suspicion, or maybe they have complaint, and they are looking at evidence to see whether there's a need to start a formal investigation, formal procedure. Okay, if they decide yes, there is something going on here, they can initiate proceedings. Okay. If they say no, there is nothing like worth investigating here, they can just like closing the case, and that can include rejecting the complaint if they started their preliminary investigation as a result of a complaint, and also includes commitment decision, and we will talk about these commitment decisions as well. Let's say there is no commitment decision, or they think that there can be infringement, then they move to second stage, notification of statement of objections. So actually letting the party undertaking subject to investigation know about the investigation, and giving them chance to say what they want to say about this issue. And then we have final decision stage, and this can also include rejecting the complaint. Okay, as a result of the second stage, they can say that okay, actually there was nothing in here, and they can again reject the complaint. So let's start with preliminary investigation stage. Commission has extensive fact-finding power. Okay, when they when they get suspicious or when they get a complaint, they have so many tools and they have extensive powers to see whether there is something going on, whether there is need for formal proceeding. For example, Article 18, requesting undertakings to supply information, so they can request undertakings to supply information to them. They can conduct interviews, they can take statements, conduct inspection in the premises of undertakings. I think this is the coolest one, so they just have to go and like put their computers, all the files, and in terms of power to take statements, the important thing is that they can take statements from individuals, but individuals should have, like, they have to get the consent of individuals, okay? They cannot force individuals to give their statements. Individuals should be willing to give their statements. In terms of privilege against self-incrimination, what's privilege against self-incrimination? Probably you have this in your systems as well.
When there is an investigation, the questions that are made to the person in question can't pull the person to self-incriminate.
Yes.
Himself.
So you cannot compel person, including witness, to incriminate him or herself, okay? So you have duty to cooperate with commission if there is an investigation, but there is this limit to that, and this is privilege against self-incrimination. You cannot force anyone to say anything that can cause a proceeding against them. Okay, and we will see similar thing is also they have in the States. And finally, legal professional privilege, and I think this is really important for us. So what is legal professional privilege? First, and actually I also wonder whether in your jurisdictions you have official legal professional privilege rules that lawyers can rely on. So let's start, what is legal professional privilege? It's not only competition law specific.
It protects the dialogue between the parties and the legal representation. So the parties are saying about what they've done. The commission can't directly ask the lawyers to implicate the party.
Okay, good. So, and in general, actually this is something lawyers have, like in English system, and I think probably in Scotland as well. So if your potential client, let's say, approaching you to get your opinion in terms of a potential proceeding against him or her, that communication actually privileged. Okay, they cannot use that communication between the lawyer and client in their proceedings, in their investigations. Okay, why we have such a rule? And if you I'm not sure whether you worked before or anything, but if you worked or if you receive email from a lawyer before, generally on top of the email it's always like legally privileged. There is this note. We like to keep it clear that the communication between parties is privileged. So why we are concerned about that? Why we have that kind of privilege?
Otherwise, you might not tell your lawyer everything.
Yeah.
And this is a relationship of trust. And so you have to actually go to court and have your opinion inside the case.
Yes. So I mean, also it's related to basic, like, fundamental rights. Everybody has this this right to defend themselves, and they have to go to lawyer as a professional, and they have to be open with their lawyer to get that service, like proper service from them. And if we don't have this privilege, then they cannot trust whether they can write anything or say anything to their lawyer, okay? In terms of competition law specific, in terms of EU competition law, if your client is approaching you in terms of, let's say, potential competition investigations regarding conduct or agreement that he is involved, but there's also one condition in order to benefit from this EU competition law. So the reason why that person is approaching the lawyer should be potential or ongoing investigation, okay? And the other condition is
They can't be in-house.
the lawyer cannot be in-house lawyer, okay? So it should be, yes, so it should be independent lawyer, counsel outside of the organization, okay? Do you know which case actually introduced this, through which case it was recognized in EU competition law? There's legal professional privilege. Yes, so it's not something you can find in treaties or guidelines or anything. It is case law, okay? Any question about this slide? Okay. Inter partes adversarial stage. So this is the second stage. In the first stage, what we said, Commission is looking whether their suspicion is valid, is whether there is a need to open formal investigation, and if they say yes, they are moving to this second stage, okay? And when they move this, and this is actually quite similar to in general private procedural, civil procedural rules, they are serving this statement of objections to the undertaking or undertaking subject to investigation and giving them right to be heard, okay? They are saying that, okay, we are thinking that you are engaged in this kind of anti-competitive agreements or conducts. Tell us, so what's your justification? Is it right, or do you have anything to defend yourself? Okay. Upon receiving statement of objections, undertaking can file a response to that, like again similar to civil proceedings, or actually not or, but also ask oral hearing. Okay, this oral hearing is within European Commission. So this part actually aiming to give chance to the undertaking to say if they have anything to say about the investigation. Okay. Another table, and this table is summarizing the decisions that the European Commission, actually not European Commission can make, but in general decisions can be made in scope of the Commission's investigations, okay? Some of them, like the 3 columns, final, and the other 2 is procedural and interim decisions. So first decision is Commission conducted the investigation and decided that there is an infringement. So they can make an infringement decision, which means that which functions as cease and desist order. So you need to stop what you are doing because you are infringing competition law, okay? And this can be in 2 forms, behavioral and structural, okay? So what is behavioral decision as a final decision? Behavioral remedy. Can you think about example?
An injunction.
But this is final decision. Injunction is actually, yeah, I stopped. Yeah, okay, but what kind of? So, can you think about example of?
So like if you give them an injunction saying that you can't pursue this agreement.
Okay, or for example, stop to act according to that agreement. Yes. For example, they order Microsoft in one of the cases. It was related to this, I think it was media player case, and it was related to giving interoperability information to undertakings, and they ordered Microsoft to provide that information to other undertakings on fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms. Okay, so they order Microsoft to do something, okay, to stop the infringement, because Microsoft not doing that, Microsoft by not doing that was infringing competition law. What about structural remedy? So this was related to behavior, ordering certain type of behavior. What about structural remedy? Are you taking merger control? Who's taking merger control? Maybe you discussed about these in merger control as well.
No, we haven't.
Structural remedies.
No, we haven't talked about remedies yet.
Okay. Anyway, so what is structural remedy?
But I think I read
It
like
is something that just like this investment order.
Sorry?
This investment.
Okay.
So it means that you need to take some business of one company to another company to sell some company that is involved in the complete competition.
Yes. Yes, so you have to make a structural change in your company, okay? This can include diversify certain type of assets, or maybe if you have, like, for example, subsidiaries, maybe sell that subsidiary to another undertaking. So you have to change the structure of your company. So which one do you think is more convenient for commission and more effective? Behavioral or structural remedy?
Structural maybe, because it will be more permanent, while behavioral remedy, well, an undertaking actually could repeat maybe the same mistake, so it would be less convenient.
Yes. And because of this, actually, Commission is using more and more structural remedies, because in case of behavioral remedy, they also have this, like, you need to monitor it. Like, you can order them to do something, but how can you be sure that they are actually complying with your order? Whereas in structural remedy, once they did it, it's done. And so structural remedy is more convenient for commission. Then we have, as again, final decision, commitments decisions. This is something new, and Regulation 1/2003 brought this, and it has been used by the Commission quite often. This is actually, I think, also really important and efficient solution, because in this one, it's more like a contract between Commission and the target undertaking, okay? So during the investigation, they are coming together, and undertaking says that, okay, I understand you have concerns, I will do this, 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 and this should relieve your concerns, okay? It's kind of a settlement agreement. It's not settlement agreement, but they are making this negotiation. If they agree on commitments, these commitments become binding on the undertaking, okay? It is good for undertaking because there's no official infringement decision in this case, okay? And so yeah, and they have to comply the commitments actually they designed. So what do you think, like, in terms of the advantages of this commitments decisions in general, not only for the undertaking?
It's a better and swifter implementation.
Mm-hmm.
It's more effective remedies and will have a quicker impact in the market.
Yes, and it is really important that quick impact on the market, because all these competition law investigations actually something holding undertakings back, okay? Not only the ones actually subject to the investigation, but the others actually maybe doing like same kind of, or planning to do same kind of agreements or engaging in same kind of conduct. So it is really important to solve these problems swiftly for the sake of the market as well, not only for the undertakings. It is, I think, like as a lawyer, for me the best thing is there's no infringement decision, okay? No infringement decision, you close the file as soon as possible, no bad publicity or minimum publicity, okay? Because remember, this is happening in the first part of the investigation. And because there is no infringement decision, it cannot be subject to follow-on damages action, okay? So no one can come up and say that there is a commitment decision and I want, like relying on that commitment decision, I want damages from that undertaking. They have to start from scratch. They first have to prove that there was infringement, okay? Then after that they can ask for damages, okay? So if you have a client having, like, if it's like a 51% or even 50% thinking that they can be subject to remedies of commission, try to get a deal with the commission, okay, as soon as possible. And it's really common also in civil procedure. You always try to close the file as soon as possible, if you can, before proceedings start. If you can't, before getting final decision, because everything on this process also costs your clients, okay? I mean, it's good for you, they are paying you, but then they can come back to you because you close that case really efficiently, so make long-term plans. Findings of inapplicability. It's a positive decision regarding that Article 101 or 102 will not apply to that case, situation, agreement. There is no such decision so far, I think. I mean, there is this in theory, but there is no such a decision. And in terms of the not final decisions, we have procedural decisions, basically decisions related to the things that Commission is doing while using their fact-finding power. So for conducting inspections on premises or ordering undertakings or individuals to provide information to the Commission. Okay? And finally, interim measures. So what is interim measures? Preliminary injunction, interim injunction. What are those things? They are again not competition law specific. Yes.
So it's a temporary thing, so if say that there is potentially infringement,
Okay, so why we want to stop some type of infringements that temporarily? I mean, final decisions are for that, no? I mean, after the whole proceeding, there will be a decision, and they can order. Actually, this is a question for everybody. Sorry for just looking at you. So, final decision is for that. No purposes. If there's infringement, stop the infringement. But then, what's your name? Nika. As Nika said, sometimes we want to stop infringements temporarily. Yes.
So there might be some irreparable damages.
Perfect. Irreparable damages. So if you don't stop it immediately, and if it continues to, like if it continues during the investigation, let's say investigation takes 1 year or maybe even like 6 months, the amount of damages occur at the end can be irreparable for the undertakings affected by that infringement. Okay? Also, for example, in civil procedure, we use preliminary injunction to protect evidence. You can get a preliminary injunction from court to go and seize evidence if there is a risk that it can be lost if it's not happened. Okay? For example, again, in terms of damages, it's really common thing in patent infringement actions. Okay? Because it is in patent infringement actions, they can take really long time, and generally it's impossible to calculate the losses of the patent owner during that infringement. So you want to stop it immediately. The important thing is there should be urgency, so you have to prove that it should be stopped immediately, but also you have to show that you have likelihood of success in the main proceeding, okay? So in this case, you have to show that the result of the investigation will be in your favor. As an example, so it was in IMS Health case. During the investigation, IMS ordered to share that I think it was piece of software to create that a unique brick structure data for pharmaceuticals data, and during the investigation they are ordered to share that with their competitors in order to stop infringement immediately as an interim measure. Okay? And actually, for a long time, it hadn't been used that much, and this happened in Broadcom case 2 weeks ago. I think I read about it in 17th of October. So they, after 18 years, they ordered Broadcom to suspend their agreements in TV and modem chipsets market during the investigation. Okay? Any questions about decisions? So in cartel cases, besides the decisions, we have settlement procedures. Okay? This is new. It was brought in 2008, and with this regulation, and there's also the settlement notice regulating this area. And the aim is to speed up and simplify the administrative procedure to reduce the number of cases going to EU courts. Okay? Basically, you can think about them as like an ordinary settlements, commission, and undertaking involving cartel. They are agreeing on the terms of settlement agreements to close the file. It is it has advantages because it's time saving and efficient. Obviously, and that was the main aim, less appeals to the EU courts, because why there are less appeals to EU courts in settlements?
Because they say on the contract, it takes time to do.
Thank you. Yeah, it will be silly, no? You agree and then you appeal. No. So if you agree something, you won't appeal it. And also, if you settle, there is this motivation for undertakings to have to get 10% reduction on the fine. Okay. Fines and periodic penalties. So if there is substantive or procedural infringement of competition law, you can face with fines, okay? But in order to impose fine should the infringement should be intentional or negligently. But the important point is negligently is interpreted really broadly in this code. So if you can prove that the outcome was something that the undertaking can foresee, probably you can say that there was negligence. Okay, and remember about being prudent merchant. So when you are a merchant undertaking someone doing business, you have higher threshold in terms of that kind of stuff like negligency compared to individuals. Okay, maybe something that you cannot claim that me as a person cannot foresee or couldn't foresee, but you can, maybe same thing can be considered as foreseeable for undertaking because they are in that business, they are doing, they should have those skills, experience, and knowledge when they are doing stuff, okay? And then we also have periodic penalties in regulation, and there is nothing special about penalties. If anyone thinking otherwise, comment now. But they are basically periodically paying some amount of money as a penalty. Okay. Leniency policy. So what is leniency policy? Why we have it? Uncomfortable silence.
Because if you've got a cartel, it's hard to identify. So if you make it, like if you give the first person from the cartel comes forward immunity, the law would come forward and expose the rest of it, so the commission can start an investigation.
Perfect. Yes. We have leniency policy to detect cartels. Okay. So why they create such a initiative for cartels? So we have this like policy devised to detect cartels. We want cartel members to come forward, give information, so we can detect cartels. Why?
Well, I think it is much harder from the outside to find evidence that they have specific cartel actions, but it's much easier to find the evidence from inside.
Yes, I mean if you are cartel, you will keep it secret. Okay, so if we are cartel, we will not go out and say, oh, okay, I'm a member of a cartel. We meet secretly. We try to keep it like secret as much as possible. So we need some initiative to encourage cartel members come forward and say that, okay, look, there's this cartel here, okay? And it's also good because it's creating that pressure on cartel members, because if you are the first one going to commission and giving information, you can possibly get full immunity from the commission. So if, let's say, 10, like this will be a really huge cartel, but let's say, okay, we are all cartel members, so it's also creating that pressure on us that who will be the first one going to the commission, okay? And that also encourage members go and give information. It's important to be the first one, but it's also important to give valuable information, okay? You cannot just like go and say something like ordinary, but commission should think that, okay, the information that you are giving to me is quite valuable, I like it, so I can give you immunity. And also after reporting the cartel, it requires full cooperation, so it doesn't end there. You need to cooperate with commission during the investigation, okay? If you are first one, you can get full immunity. If you are second one, depending on the information that you are giving, you can get some reduction in the final fine, okay? And depending on like your order, I think the second one gets between 30 and 50% reduction in the fine, and third one between 20 and 30% reduction in the fine. So if you are not first one, don't be sorry. If you have valuable information, you can still benefit from something. Important point is, even you benefit from leniency, so if you are the first undertaking and get full immunity, that does not prevent civil actions for damages against you. So still, third parties can take an action against you if they harm because of the cartel and ask you to compensate their damages, okay? So the leniency before the commission is something different from your liability as a result of the cartel to outside world, okay? Let's take 10 minutes break and then we will continue with sector inquiry. So sector inquiries. So what is sector inquiries? What's the difference between individual investigations and sector inquiries? Okay.
An individual investigation will look at what one company is doing, and a sector inquiry will look at, say, a field of commerce and what is happening in general, what is the general practice between various companies, what are the norms.
It's in general actually quite like totally right. Looking at particular markets, okay, whether that market is operating okay, is there something wrong with that particular market? So rather than focusing on individual or certain amount of undertakings practices, it's looking at the market in general. obviously there should be like Commission should have that feeling that something is not going well with that within that market, but maybe there is no something that they can point like individually, so they can open sector inquiries and request information from undertakings in order to see whether the market is actually like functioning properly. As a result of sector inquiry, they can start individual investigations, okay, against individual undertakings if they think that there is actually something wrong in the market and undertakings were doing something anti-competitive. Have you ever heard about CMA's market investigation power? CMA UK Competition Authority can also do something similar to this, but there is one difference between their power and EC's. So, as a result of sector inquiry, Commission cannot impose fines to the undertaking subject to inquiry, okay? If they think that there is something they need to like impose fine or make like a final decision about requiring their interference with the undertaking's conduct, they have to initiate individual investigations after sector inquiry. Whereas in UK, CMA can impose fines, make decisions about undertakings, individual conducts in general. So it's actually like quite a big power that CMA has in UK. So all of a sudden you can face with a fine as a result of their market investigation. Okay? But still, even though Commission cannot impose any fines, it is really, really important and can be influential. New laws can be made. Regulators in certain markets, like related to that market, become like more alert, and also, in general, it can make undertakings in that market more like cautious about their conducts and agreements. So, as an example, for example, in 2009, Commission had this inquiry into the European pharmaceutical sector. Have you ever heard about this inquiry? So it was as a result of mostly pay-for-delay cases in pharmaceutical sector. Okay, who is taking IPN market here? I know you choose, yeah. So what was I'm not sure. Do you remember pay-for-delay? Pay-for-delay agreements.
No, I do not.
Okay. Is there anyone here? Yes.
So you have a patent that is about to expire. And of course, when you have a patent, you have some kind of monopoly. And when it's about to expire, you pay your competitors not to put competing products into the market, so you can keep your monopoly for a longer time.
Yes. So what they are actually doing there is like the perfectly like how can I say textbook explanation, but also the important bit is, so there is a transfer of money from patent owner to, we call them generic producers, okay? So when you have patented pharmaceutical product, and actually this is like a real competition problem, and for the ones who will take, who is taking advanced competition law, we will be talking about this again in the seminars dealing with IP and competition. But this is like a really serious problem in competition in general. So what happens is that when you have patented pharmaceutical, let's say you are selling that pharmaceutical for 100 as a price, okay? And once your patent expired, generic can enter the market, and that can reduce your price to up to 60%. So it before, when you have your patent, you can sell your product for 100, and it can drop to 40, maybe below that, because then you have to compete with the generic, which generally don't have that much cost as the innovator company. Okay, so in order to prevent that, what innovator companies, so like companies having patents doing is that having settlement agreements with generic companies and saying is that you don't enter the market, I will pay you your profit. Okay, so let's say next 2 years you will not launch your generic product, and I will pay the estimated profit to you. Okay, it's because they are making crazy amount of money from pharmaceuticals. Okay, I mean it's okay they are getting return of their research and development and everything, but I work in that industry and they are making a lot of money, so they have that power to paying the profits of generics to them. So who is harmed? Like who is harmed from this process?
The consumer,
Consumer, because
you have to pay higher prices.
I mean generic is okay; they are getting their profits. Patent owner is in a good position; they are keeping their prices high, so more profits. So the actually only one harm from that practice is consumers. And actually, who is the main purchaser of pharmaceuticals?
The state.
Who's that state? Yes. So if you are coming from a country who has a social security system, mostly states buy pharmaceuticals, okay? So you don't pay from your pocket, states pay for your pharmaceuticals. That means that actually states are paying a lot of money for patented products for during the time, after the time patent expired. So that kind of practices gave rise to this inquiry. So can you see the what kind of situation leads Commission to look at the whole market in general? It was not like one thing, but there was a general problem in the market, and they make this inquiry, they request information, and at the end they publish this report. After that, in 2011, in my country, we had the same inquiry, okay? And it was crazy, and I was working in the law firm. What happened is that, and I was working in that law firm that actually we had all the cases of patent owners. So all the pharmaceutical companies that you can name, like Boehringer, GSK, AstraZeneca, Novartis, they were all our plaintiffs for years. So they asked us to provide all the information about our past actions, okay? So what we did is we took all the files from archives, and generally what they're doing is that they are sending these pages long papers filled with all these questions, you need to answer these questions. So part of that answered by companies themselves, and part of that was answered by us. It was a really painful process, long hours, nights, and at the end, I think it took around 3 years for them to publish a report. But yeah, it can be really, really painful process for you, but it can be really influential, because after these inquiries for the commissioned ones, pharmaceutical companies become more careful about their practices. For example, you can settle in patent infringement action, but you shouldn't be transferring money to generic companies. So if there is a transfer, some amount of money to the generic company, this can look bad. Okay? So if you will work for a pharmaceutical company, you will see that they are really cautious about not to give any benefit to generic companies in general. Any questions about sector inquiries? Okay. Proceeding before the Court of Justice, We already talked about them, so I will not go into detail. I think it was seminar 3 when we talked about institutions. But just to highlight, when commission made decision, you can challenge that decision before the general court, and then after that, general court's decision can be appealed before the court of justice on point of law. Okay. So we have different articles about appealing, challenging normal decisions, and also appeals against penalties. What is the difference between these two appeals? So if there is like a decision about like a final decision of commission, let's say a behavioral remedy, you can challenge it under Article 263, and then we have Article 261 for appeals against penalties. What's the difference between these two? No? They just made like two different articles for nothing.
First one, the Article 262 is for challenges on like the commission overstretching the powers or not finding correct result, whereas the second one is for appealing what you admit that you done wrong, but you think that the penalty that's been imposed is too high or too restrictive.
Okay, so what is the consequence of that in terms of the power of the court when deciding in these two different appeals?
So from the second one, they would only look at the penalty that was given, they would look back into the case.
Okay, so in the second one, we said that in the first one, Court of Justice has limited jurisdiction, okay? They can annul the decision partially or completely, but they cannot replace the decision. Whereas for the penalties, they have full jurisdiction. They can reduce the fine, annul the fine, or actually increase the fine, okay? Because one of the reasons why we have two different articles for two different appeals, okay? Okay, any questions for EU? No. Before moving interim measures, I referred here again. So when you appeal, let's say you get a decision from Commission and you appeal that decision. That does not stop the application of the decision automatically, okay? So because there is the decision, you have to act according to that decision. If you want to stop it, you have to ask for interim measures from the court, okay? Again, as like other interim measures, you have to show that there is this urgency. If you apply the decision, there will be irreparable harms, damages, and say that I need your decision not to apply commission decision, okay, during the appeal. It happened in Bayer Adalat case, and according to the commission decision, Bayer should reduce their prices, pharmaceutical prices, and they argue that if we do that reduction, this will be this will damage our business like heavily, especially our one particular subsidiary, and possibly many people will lose jobs there. So they got interim measures not to apply the commission decision. Okay? Now I can ask any question about EU. let's move to US. So again, just a reminder, we are just focusing on federal level enforcement in the US, okay? We are not looking at state level antitrust enforcement. Because remember, most of the states have their own competition antitrust laws, and there's also that these laws can be enforced at state level. But today we will look at federal level, and we will look at public enforcement. So enforcement by DOJ and FTC. Okay? But we will see that actually courts in US are more involved with antitrust enforcement than the courts we have in here in terms of public enforcement. So because in Europe, you generally, I'm talking about public enforcement, you see courts as a final point for the revision appeal of decisions. But in the US, we will see that actually courts are actively involved in the enforcement along with particularly the Department of Justice in criminal enforcement. Okay? And Department of Justice and FTC have broad powers similar to European Commission to investigate anti-competitive conducts. So enforcement by Department of Justice and FTC. So again, like Commission, they can start their investigation ex officio. So they can decide something is going wrong here, I start an investigation, or open an information that they got from third party or third source. This can be a complaint again, or maybe news, or maybe like information from a leniency applicant. Okay, so they are really free in that respect. Type of investigation depends on the form of the suspected violation, okay? So in the US, we have civil investigation and criminal investigation, okay? What is the difference between them? So either they should go for civil investigation or criminal investigation. It's not something we have in EU. This is something different in US. It's on the slide.
Well, the civil ones exclude cartels, the criminal ones exclude both cartels?
Yes. So if you have a cartel agreement, that means that you have criminal investigation. Other than cartel, you have civil investigation. Okay? We will start with civil investigation and then move to criminal investigations. So in civil investigations, Department of Justice and FTC share power. Okay? They can both conduct civil investigations. Department of Justice does that through bringing lawsuits, so that actually indicates that like immediate involvement of courts actually in their investigation, and FTC does this through administrative proceedings. Okay, so when first let's clear it. There is a cooperation between them, so they are not just like randomly starting investigation without consulting each other. So they are in communication, and they know like when one of them is starting or doing something, the other one stops, and so they try to not to step on each other's foot. Other than that, before moving these stages, lawsuit or administrative proceedings, they have internal assessments, like our preliminary investigation process. First, they assess whether there is need to start lawsuit or administrative proceeding, and they think that yes, then they start lawsuit or administrative proceedings. Also, during that initial process, before lawsuit or administrative proceeding, they explore opportunities of settlements with target undertakings. Okay, so they try to also close the file as soon as possible with not spending that much sources or time on the case. In the civil enforcement, actually, they mainly rely on voluntary information provided by third parties. Okay, so this can be again complaints or voluntary witnesses coming forward and saying that I can make a statement, and they have this. Okay, yes. So they have this civil investigative demands. Did you hear about these or read about this? Actually, basically, through civil investigative demands, they can compel individuals or entities to produce information to them, okay? And obviously, in order to make such a request, they have to have a reason to believe that that entity or individual actually has that information in its possession, okay? Let me see what's the next one. Okay. Entity, person receiving civil investigative demands can do three things. Produce the information, okay? Give a written response, okay? Maybe negotiate the scope of the demands. Okay, they can say that, yeah, okay, I don't have that information, but I have this, so are you okay with me providing this? And finally, they can give testimony they can give oral testimony as a result of the demands. Okay? Besides civil investigative demands, actually, FTC can issue investigative subpoenas and compel document production and testimony as well. And also they can, if they can order individuals or entities to provide written reports to them, FTC. And when you make such an order, if the entity, that person, does not comply with that order, they can enforce that order in federal court. Okay? So, any questions about these civil investigations and the tools that can be used to get information by FTC and DOJ? Okay. Industry studies. So what is industry studies? This is quite similar to sector inquiries of the Commission, okay? Through industry studies, FTC can look at particular business or like operations in general and request information about about them, and that can include confidential information. And I just checked, and I saw that currently they are studying patent assertion entities. Have you ever heard about patent assertion entities? No? So these are entities acquiring patents to enforce against others, okay? They are not practicing patents, but they are creating these portfolios, and they are making money through licensing, and in case there is infringement, they are enforcing these patents, and they can be particularly problematic in terms of competition law. Why? And basically, they are patent owners enforcing their patents. When they are acquiring patents, and then they are enforcing their patents. But the only difference is they are not doing anything, like they are not, for example, producing anything protected by that patent. Why do you think this can be problematic? Why their conducts can be more dangerous in terms for competition compared to normal patent owners?
Because consumers aren't benefiting from the patent
Yes.
as much as they should be.
Yeah, if they stop if there is, like, for example, infringing product, and if they stop the infringing product, then because they are not also practicing the patent, that means that that patent product is not on the market. Yes. And actually, coming from that, like maybe one step before, because they are in patent actions, there is this kind of balance between plaintiff and defendant all the time. And it's because for most of the companies, they can be patent owner and implementer at the same time. So for this patent, you can be patent owner and company X can be implementer, so you can take an infringement action for that. But then maybe you have, like, for this patent, you can be an implementer and that company X can be patent owner. So when you are taking action, you always think, what will be the consequence of this for the patents that the other company, the defendant company, have for me, okay? That kind of creates natural balance in terms of litigations and patents. But for patent assertion entities, because they are not practicing patents, they are shielded against kind of threats. They don't need to think about, if I take patent infringement action for this patent, then the company can take an infringement action for its patent to me. They don't care. They are not practicing patents, so they don't need to worry about whether any possible infringement actions stop their production. Okay? Because of this, they can be quite problematic in terms of competition law. Okay? They can enforce their patents so aggressively. Okay? And not quite similar, but yeah, I think we can say it's similar. Department of Justice also can conduct consultations in terms of understanding how the market is functioning. Again, like in general, certain types of business practices or organizations, okay, without taking initiating official investigation. Criminal investigations. Remember who can take criminal investigation? Who can start criminal investigation? Yes.
Only the DOJ?
Yes. So it is exclusive authority of DOJ, okay? FTC cannot start criminal investigation. As we said before, it is against hardcore cartel cases, criminal investigations, and imposing fines on corporate defendants or fines and imprisonment against individuals. For this part, can you detect the difference between US and EU? Because you're not, yes.
I think that only applies in the EU.
Yes. Why we only have fines in the EU?
Because it's only brought against the undertakings.
Perfect. So in EU, we don't have individuals' liability in terms of competition law. Okay? If individual is involved in anti-competitive behavior, that is only reflected to the associated undertaking. Okay? You cannot, for example, put an individual into prison in the EU. But UK is exception. Okay? I'm talking about EU level. Okay? So instead of civil investigative demands, DOJ mostly use these tools in order to conduct their investigations, and they are actually assisted by FBI when they are doing this. So it's quite serious. First one is search warrants. They can conduct search in certain premises and seize evidence provided in the warrant. They can conduct interviews. They can conduct it in two ways. First, they can issue, serve subpoena and compel persons to give interview. And the second one is actually voluntary. Individual can come and say that I want to give interview. Why do you think individual will come to DOJ and want to give interview?
To also reduce their penalty.
So individual's penalty.
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, if you, let's say you're a director or employee, because there is a liability for individuals in the US, you may want to come forward and actually convince DOJ as you don't have any fault in this anti-competitive conduct, and so you can be willing to giving interviews. Okay? Wiretaps. I think this is crazy. I'm not sure whether they are doing something like this in EU, but basically they can intercept personal communication, including emails and phones, if there is a, I mean, obviously they need a court order to do that, and they have to show that there's a probable cause to believe that through wiretaps they can get the evidence, like the person subject to wiretapping is maybe like committed the anti-competitive conduct or about to commit the conduct. Okay? And grand jury subpoenas. Did you hear about grand jury? No. Okay. So grand jury is between like 16 and 23 people selected randomly, and their sole purpose is coming together and consider whether there is a probable cause that there is an anti-competitive or like infringement of antitrust law, considering the DOJ's evidence. Okay, and while doing that, they are actually from voting roles and let me see, and they are in different judicial districts. I think they are quite similar to jury, but let's not confuse it. So anyway, random people deciding whether there's like a probable cause, there's a antitrust infringement. And in order to do that, first they are considering evidence of Department of Justice, but also they can issue subpoenas for document production. So they can say, persons like, submit this document to me, or they can ask them to come and give a oral testimony before them, okay? So this is one way, also one way of getting information during the criminal investigation. And obviously, besides those, if you have a leniency applicant, the information given by leniency applicant can also be used in criminal investigations by the Department of Justice. Do you have any questions about this part? Okay. Privilege against self-incrimination. We already talked about this in EC in Europe, and quite similar, same principle coming from Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and basically no one can compel to self-incriminate, including witnesses, okay? But the interesting thing is actually Department of Justice can circumvent this privilege, okay? The first way for them to circumvent, and the first bullet point actually, having like agreement with the person, okay? They can say that, okay, give me information and I will give you leniency or protection from any criminal proceedings in respect of that criminal activity, okay? And the second one is statutory immunity. So in this case, the Department of Justice asking federal court to issue an order to compel that person give information under immunity. So again, person is getting immunity, but this time through court decision, okay? And when person gets statutory immunity, in principle, that means that that person cannot be prosecuted by federal, at federal level or state level, okay? So it's like a pretty good deal for the person. But in order to get such a thing, probably you need to be a really important witness for the case. Okay? This is briefly mentioning the penalties in Sherman Act and then Clayton Act. So if there is an infringement of Sherman Act, there is this Antitrust Criminal Penalty and Enhancement and Reform Act, and it is providing penalties like this. And as you can see, the first one is, and these are maximum, obviously, 10 years of imprisonment. So, for example, if you're a director in a company engaged in uncompetitive conduct, you may face 10 years of imprisonment in the U.S. jail. I think it's terrible. Then also we have corporate fines, so fines against corporate entities, and also fines against individuals. Okay. Clayton Act is Clayton Act is supplementing Sherman Act. Okay, and Clayton Act important in terms of remedies because of that treble damages. Okay, if there's infringement of Sherman Act, let me see. No. Yes, Sherman Act, Clayton Act, and Robinson-Patman Act, Section 2. Private enforcement, so private parties or Department of Justice or FTC can ask for treble damages. So damages multiply 3. So the damage can be quite high, and because of this, that clause is quite important, and it's actually one of the reasons sometimes undertakings want to take damages action in the US rather than in other jurisdictions, okay? Because you can get more damages, like more money in your damages action in the US. Department of Justice leniency program, similar to our leniency program. The only difference is there is difference between corporate leniency and individual leniency. Why there is such a difference there in the US? Well, because in the EU, remember, ours is ours is corporate leniency, no? Why? I mean, obviously, okay, if we go back to basics, is remember, undertaking can be also individual person, and as an undertaking, an individual person, if comes to EC and apply for leniency, then it will be individual undertaking applying. But we don't have this kind of difference in EU. Why do you think they have this? Actually, we already gave this answer. Because I asked it in different ways. The answer is same, but I asked the question different way. Not for leniency, but. So who can have liability in the US from antitrust conduct? So corporate entities can have liability and individuals, yeah. So because they can have liability, they have special individual leniency program, okay? In corporate leniency program, obviously corporate entities, companies coming forward, reporting infringement and asking for fuel immunity, and they can get it similar to Europe if they give valuable information and if they also satisfy with other conditions. And that conditions different in terms of when they approach the Department of Justice. If they approach before Department of Justice initiating investigation, different conditions, and after initiating investigation, different conditions. And again, as in Europe, they have to fully cooperate with the Department of Justice after benefiting, applying for leniency. Okay? This can be also extended to officers, directors, and employees of the company, entity. There is no rule, like it's not like if a company is benefiting from leniency, directors and employees will benefit from that. There is no such rule, but that can be extended. There is this option. And again, similar to EU, if you are not the first undertaking, you can still, like if you're, for example, second one, you can still get some benefits in terms of fines. So maybe you cannot get full immunity, but you can have some benefits in terms of fine, okay? Reduction in the fine. And individual leniency, as we said, because individuals can be liable, there's individual leniency program, so individuals can come on their behalf and report infringements to benefit full immunity. Okay? Actually, that was it. Any question